Hey y'all,
What's going on, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd.
and we
And we
are
are the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains. We were dead on my side.
That means we're going to be off. Not just kidding.
Yeah, never stopping, never stopping.
It's the best.
Well, good to see you again. Good, we're getting back into the swing of podcasting, which
Yeah.
we've
Get a
gotten
little.
on the episode that posted recently. Aladdin was like, finally a new episode, and I was like, I was hoping no one would notice. We took a week off.
I know, well, life's just
We're
crazy. Middle of the summer, you got holidays and family outings, stuff like that. But yeah, I think hopefully things will slow down and we'll kind of get back into the routine and the cadence and keep some good videos coming up for you guys. So
Yeah, so tonight we have an interesting one. We have this I would say this is the first episode where we're definitely way outside my expertise. Because if I don't think I've ever seen Amadinas.
Amadinas, yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen them in person. If I have, it's only like one or two times.
Yeah,
And
they're
you're
hard to
breeding
find.
them.
Yeah, they're hard to find. I lucked out. It's probably been 2 years ago. We had a guy in the Salt Lake, Utah area that he was kind of more of like a vendor. So he just brought in birds from all over the U.S. and he usually brought in some pretty good, rare, hard to find birds. And he brought in two pairs of Amadinas. And to be honest with you, I wasn't like chomping at the bits to buy these birds. I actually went and bought some Goulian finches and a pair of parrot finches from him. And he had those there. And we have a really good relationship. We've done birds for a while, and he's given me birds on loan and stuff like that, you know. And so he's like, hey, he's like, I've got these Amadinas in. He had a redhead pair and a yellowhead pair. And he's like, he's like, do you want to just take them on a breeding loan and see if you can do anything with them? And I was like, yeah, why not, you know? And that kind of started I think I've grown to really like these birds. I think many people in Australia say that they're, what do they call it, the gray syndrome. So they're not super pretty. They're from Africa, not Australia, but kind of a dull
That
brown.
community, yeah.
Yeah, dull brown, most of the body, and then the males have, a red head in the wild, and then in captivity, we've been able to create a yellow head mutation. But so yeah, that kind of stemmed from those two pairs a few years back, and had a lot of success with them. And then in this last year, I had a chance to get a couple more from California area and kind of introduce some new bloodlines and stuff like that. So been keeping them for a few years, breeding them, and having a good time with them. So
And they're related to cutthroats, right? Do you know where in
yeah.
Africa they're from?
I don't know where, and I don't know if they share the same regions. I know they're closely related. So if you have them together, they're similar to like your Parsons and your long-tailed shaft-tailed finches. They'll interbreed, and their chicks are fertile. So they're very closely related to the cutthroats. They're a little bit bigger in size than the cutthroat, and have a different song, a little bit of a different song than your cutthroats do. But yeah, closely related. Not quite sure where at in the region of Africa that they originate from, but yeah, have to keep them separated
Well, it's
if you
always
do
a
have
safe
both
bet.
those.
If anybody asks me where something from Africa is from and I don't know, I say sub-Saharan because there's nothing in the desert.
And you're probably right. It's probably is the region that
But
they're from,
it's,
but
you get in Africa, you have the big desert on top, then you have real jungle in the middle, and then you get to like plains and grasslands in
yeah.
the bottom. So if you
And
say
I know they
sub-Saharan,
are,
you're safe.
yeah, they are kind of in the drier climates. I just don't know where that's located throughout the regions of Africa, but
It's
definitely not a tropical bird.
it's got to be south or east then.
Yeah.
That and it's interesting to me, the African birds in general, the African finches are sort of like finches, like my weavers, right? African finches are either really small, like all your different waxbills, or they're usually pretty big
Yeah.
size. They're either
Yeah.
smaller or bigger than your Australian finches. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's Bergman's principle, which we've talked about before, which the further you are from the equator, the bigger you get.
Right.
But but weavers live pretty close. So I don't know. I don't know why that is. I guess just different niches that they fill, and then
Yeah. Well, Well, and to be honest with you, I feel like they've got a fairly decent size difference than the cutthroats, which surprises me with how closely they're related. And I know one of the pairs that I have came from Europe. They have European bloodlines, so they are bigger naturally just through their breeding selection process. So, but the my original pairs that I had supposedly were wild caught, and they were still, and I had cutthroats at the time as well. And
Mhm.
they were probably about almost twice the size as the cutthroat. So definitely a bigger bird.
And so you've had some success breeding them now. Let's go through that kind of line by line. I guess first of all, how do you sex them?
Yeah, so these birds are sexually dimorphic. So the males have color on their head, so they've got the red head or the yellow head. Females don't have any color; they're just a solid, gray brown color throughout their body.
And can you tell? But when you're looking at a female, you can't tell if they're redheaded or yellow-headed.
No, the I have had a couple yellow-headed females that have shown some tinges of yellow on their head, but the true wild type females don't show any versions. And I do have actually, we'll have to post it in the video. Someone just posted. I went through on Facebook. There's a like an African species Facebook page, and they had posted some of the different mutations of the Amadina finch. And I actually found out that I have a few different varieties. I've got like a fawn, the wild type, and there's a gray, and then both red and yellowhead, which I thought was pretty cool. And I knew I had different varieties, but I didn't know officially what they were called or named. There's just not a whole lot of information about these birds out there. I think due to them not being as pretty, I don't think people have looked into them as much and or done as much research with them. But yeah, your males and females are sexually dimorphic, and from they don't molt into their adult colors; they're born with them. So as soon as the chicks feather it up, you similar to cutthroats, you know which ones are males and which ones are females because they show their colors right away.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So that's how you sex them. Then nest boxing. What are they like?
So, at least through my experience, I've probably raised, goodness, probably close to 30 chicks over the last few years. I've had some really good success with them. They're really, they want to breed readily, which I think is true to most African finches. I mean, they go to nest really easy and they want to breed. It's just keeping the chicks alive with live food. So I've bred Amadinas in just your standard finch and canary nest box. With them being a little bit bigger in size, the canary nest box, or sorry, the parakeet nest box, is seems to be a little bit better for them. They like that. I have had some breed for me in the wicker baskets, which I typically try not to use those, but I do have them on hand for some of my African species, just because I don't like them and I can't see into the nest as easy and things like that. But yeah, they readily take any nest, and usually they'll raise a clutch in a nest, and then they'll usually find a different nest box for their second clutch. They kind of nest hop throughout their clutches. With my experience, now if you only have one nest box available, they'll nest right back in that one, but they do like to nest hop.
Interesting. Yeah. So, when I mount my woven nests, I put two staples from a staple gun in and slide the little prongs through. So the way I check those is I just take the whole nest off
Nice,
and tilt it out. And that's how I do my checks. But
that's
some
awesome.
species, like stars and stuff that are a little more um, nest check shy, then yeah, you're just kind of SOL. But that's why I've got that snake light that I
Yeah,
just ordered another one. So
that's I need to get me one of those. I've been wanting to get one and I just haven't done it yet.
they're in my Amazon store if you want to find one easily. But
Okay,
I just got it. They're like $16. They're not expensive, and they're good for filming too because you can shine
nice.
the light in
That's awesome.
while you're filming. Yeah, I like them a lot. But yeah, okay. So they nest hop, but they like this nest boxes. Do they build a good nest? Are they good nest builders, or
No, no, they're terrible nest builders. So usually I've found that they find nest boxes that have already been built, usually by my zebra finches, and they just jump in. Maybe the male will bring in like a feather or a twig or two, but they are not elaborate nest builders. Very messy. They don't really clean out the nests as the chicks are in there. I have not cleaned their nest boxes out with chicks in there just because they're a little bit more sensitive to nest checks. But once they're done with that clutch, I gotta empty that whole thing out because they destroy it pretty much. It's pretty nasty. So yeah, I've had them just pick a bare empty nest box, lay eggs in there, similar to like a parakeet style, where they don't build a nest and they just lay their eggs, incubate them, hatch, raise the chicks fine. They don't need an elaborate nest. I think in the wild they just find an empty hole cavity in a log and just go to town. They don't necessarily build nests, at least
Call
from
it
my
good.
experience. Yeah, and they call it
Yeah.
good. So
That's always an interesting thing to me is, some birds are like super elaborate nest builders. They're building like I mean, your weavers or like birds, like a lot of your waxbills will build a nest and then build a fake
yeah,
nest on top and all.
yeah,
And some birds are just like, nah, hole in the ground,
yeah.
good for me.
And I have, some of the mating rituals I think holds true to a lot of the African species. I've seen the male have like a piece of feather or grass in his beak and try and sing to the female. They're super clumsy and they kind of try and bob their heads up and down. It looks terrible to be honest with you. But but a lot of the other African species, especially your waxbills, that's a breeding trait or habit that they have or ritual, and they seem to follow suit in that, but don't necessarily build the nests with them.
And how many eggs in a clutch typically?
Oh man, they're good, strong, solid egg layers. So my smallest clutch of eggs is about six. They tend to
Wow.
range from 6 to 9 eggs. I've got two clutches right now. Both clutches hatched 9 eggs. Both females laid 9 eggs and hatched them. So they do larger clutches. They don't tend to. I've only the biggest clutch that I've been able to successfully raise and get out to the perch is 6 chicks, which is great. But it seems like they hatch the 8 or 9, and then usually about four of them die throughout the first week. It tends to be no matter how much egg food and live food I give them. I think it's just they they hatch several days after those first few chicks. Similar to like a canary. They tend to start sitting on their eggs the day that they lay the first one. So the chicks hatch out at different days, and those youngest ones just don't seem to have as good of a chance to survive because the other chicks
Can't
are already,
keep up.
yeah, they're already 3 days bigger and twice the size.
Yeah, and that may just be their strategy, right? Is they lay a
Yeah.
bunch, and if they lose a couple along the way, then they still get them out to the perch. And normal finch incubation periods and fledge
Yep.
periods and all that.
Yep. Normal finch incubation periods. Similar to cutthroat babies, so their chicks almost look identical. In fact, from the outside, they look identical. They're black chicks with white down on them, and well, white, kind of like a grayish down. The only difference that you can tell between a cutthroat chick and an Amadina chick is when they open their mouth, the inside of their mouth pattern is slightly different. I mean, like minimal. So I have had Amadinas raise a cutthroat finch before, a chick, because they tend to be a little bit easier to raise than your cutthroat finches, at least from my experience that I've found out. But yeah, normal incubation periods, and then similar time periods for the chicks to feather out and leave the nest. Weaning periods tend to be, within about a week and a half after they fledge to 2 weeks after they fledge. They're weaned and independent and fairly docile, good community birds. Do pretty well in a mixed aviary. I've had good success with them in the mixed aviaries.
And so they're real insect heavy when they're rearing chicks, and you just hit them
Yeah,
with a lot of mealworms, or
yeah. So these ones I've been doing mealworms and botfly larvae. I tried Aladdin from Ohana Feathers. I tried the fairy shrimp that he did, and they did okay. They did eat at him, but it wasn't their favorite. I think it's just because I've never given it to them before. They probably weren't quite sure what to do with it. But yeah, the first week and a half, maybe 2 weeks of the chick's life is extremely heavy insects. They do still feed them seeds, but it is mostly egg food and insects that they feed the chicks that first week. And then as the chicks start to feather, I actually taper off the insects and kind of wean more to seed, and they wean off on seeds. I don't feed them insects as the chicks are weaning, so they kind of make that transition fairly easy after about a week and a half, 2 weeks of after they hatch.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's cool to do a different species that not a lot of people are doing. Obviously, putting more into aviculture. Which is red or yellow dominant?
So red is dominant, but I have had hit, and that's maybe if anyone's on there, I've tried to dive into the genetics a little bit better. I've had a red-headed pair um, throw out yellow babies, so it could be that they're both split to yellow. But I've also had yellow-headed pairs, yellow-headed male and female, throw out red-headed babies, which was really confusing to me. Um, because I think red is the dominant color or genetic, but yeah, not sure on that. So if there's any experts out there, I'd love to be enlightened that way. I've also my pairs throw all both fawn and the wild type feather colorings or body color. I think the fawn and the gray they look really pretty, so it's a really lighter color. Whereas like the wild type is more of like a dirty, rusty brown throughout most of the body. So it seems to be more attracted to the lighter colors, but so they look pretty sweet. Some of those males that I have that are like yellow-headed, gray-bodied, they look pretty cool.
You got to throw some pictures in here too, because I'm guessing most
Yeah,
people aren't even going to know what they look like. What
yeah.
what else about them? What am I not asking you?
Like I mentioned before, they're fairly docile birds, and I think when they're breeding, they're bigger birds, so my other finches don't tend to mess with them. I've seen them like chase other birds away from like the entrance of their nest box hole, but that's as far as they go. Like I feel like they're pretty docile birds, very ready and eager to breed. You do have to have the live food there. The males have a funny, clumsy song, and they try and bounce up and down, which is pretty cool. I would put a plug in. They're not the prettiest birds on the block, and especially many of the other African species are very pretty, right? Most of your wax beetles have some beautiful colors in there, but just on a conservation piece, and they're not endangered in the wild in any way, but here in the United States, they're pretty hard to come by. There's not too many people out there. I've reached out to a few other breeders that have them, and we're trying to work something out so I can send them some of the babies I have, and we can cross and trade bloodlines. But if you guys see them, I would strongly encourage you to try and breed them, work with them. I've bred them both in a cage and in an aviary setting, so they will breed in both settings, and I've done it both successfully, which is pretty cool. So I think overall, they're a really cool add to your aviary. They've got a funny song. They're active, and I would encourage anybody to get them if you can get your hands on them. One, so we can continue to breed them and have them in the U.S., but two, I think they're a pretty good complement to a lot of other species. If you've got an aviary or even just a cage setting in your home, they're pretty quiet and but still a fun bird and entertaining.
Maybe I'll get you to kick me over a pair.
Yeah, man, I've got
Yeah.
I've got 7 babies from 2 clutches that are fledging this week. I'm actually going to be posting a video outside of the podcast on the Amadinas because I've had so many babies, and thankfully, most of the chicks from these 2 batches are females because my previous batches were male heavy. So I've got four four males that are pretty close to maturity and ready to go, but no females. And so now I've got some females that we can kind of cross pair with different bloodlines and stuff like that, and send out. So I've got a pair to send you if you want it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because I'm always interested to try something new. And I've by the way, speaking of something new, those crested zebra babies have started to hatch. So I've got at least two
Nice.
now. So I think, I mean, they're too it's too little to,
Yeah.
they're still in the like naked with like little wisps stage. Like one of them hatched today, the other one hatched yesterday, but they're being fed, so that's
Love
going
that.
well. So
That's awesome.
yeah, well, yeah, cool little journey down here into Africa, right?
Yeah.
And I as a general rule, the African species, because we can't import them from the wild, because some of them aren't as colorful, or some of them, they're insect heavy, so they're harder to breed. we're not seeing them as much in aviculture in the U.S. as it used to be. I mean, you used to be able to. There's a lot of them that they weren't even expensive. You could get as many as you wanted.
Yeah,
Cutthroats, I used to see
yeah,
cutthroats 50
thirty
bucks a
dollars.
pair. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
And I just was, while we were talking, I was like, man, I can't remember the last time I saw a cutthroat. It's going to be a year or two. So,
The last cutthroat pair I saw was last year, $375 for the pair. Compared
yeah,
to,
so
yeah, $50 is pretty close to even just what, 3 years up, 2, 3 years ago. So
we got to be breeding. We got to be breeding Africans. We just got to. It's, you might say, oh, that's not the prettiest finch I've ever seen. Okay, fine, but I'd like to see one, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Right,
Now
right.
they're good birds. If you guys can see it, get your hands on them, please do. I think it goes a long way and just helps with our population in captivity, and does good things. So
Awesome. All right. Well, that's Amadina's, the African bird you didn't know you wanted until you listened to this
yeah.
episode.
And if you want one, reach out to me.
Yeah, yeah. Chris is the man. Chris is the Amadina man.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, Jay, where can they get a hold of you, man?
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Threads, which I mean, I know I always jokingly say it sucks, but I was on there, man, Threads is awful. And I don't, it's basically just an echo chamber of people complaining about stuff. It's the worst app. I don't, if you're not on Threads, don't get on it. Don't waste your time. But I'm on there for birds only. And I mean, that's all I do for social media anyway, is all bird stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, what about you, Chris?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all things bird nerd. So Google or search bird nerd. You should be able to find me. And if you can't, reach out to Jay and he'll send you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I forgot to say that I'm the Javiary, Jayviva. Oh no, Jayviary, or the underscore Javiary on all those. So you can find one of us, I'm thinking. So
Sounds
all
good.
right. Well, thanks y'all. We'll catch you in the next one.
See you guys.